We're here.
Hello!
Hello.
Welcome all. Wednesday night generational change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and
And
the show just seems to get better and better, doesn't
yeah,
it?
no, this is good because I just finished a book called Longshot. Well, actually, I did an Audible book because I'm now kind of lazy and prefer to be read to. But our next guest does his own Audible. So I like that. And yes. And I have a lot of questions. It's very interesting. I saw a lot of parallels between their campaign, much on a macro level than what we were dealing with. But
yes, they had to cover a lot more territory than we did.
Yeah, no, but just the blackout, the just all like there were so many things that were so similar that they were dealing with, and I find it very interesting that they had a very similar experience on the macro level that we had here.
Yeah, there's no surprise. I mean, obviously, for those of you who know, our wonderful guest this evening is going to be Zach Graumann, who was Andrew Yang's campaign manager for his 2020 presidential campaign, and continues to work with him with Humanity Forward, and of course now with the Forward Party. Goes without saying that we're reaching sort of this breaking point in our electoral political system, and we need to be able to not trepidatiously walk into this next phase, which is not only organizing outside of electoral politics, but the prospect of forming another path within the electoral system that I think a lot of people are interested in. And if anybody can really speak to that, it is going to be.
But I do want to say, like the book, because I read it or listened, you did not, because we don't both do all books. Like one of us does a book. Okay.
She's doing
like a book. That's how it kind of works. But yeah, no, it's really quite good. So the book is called Longshot, guys. So welcome, Zach Graumann. I'm going to do it. Look.
To generational change.
Hi.
Look at that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. How's it going?
Very fancy. I'm great. How are y'all?
We're good. So I just finished listening to you tell me your story. Basically, that's why I love Audible.
When suffered through hours of me droning.
No, I like it. In fact, I only like it best when it's the author and it's a nonfiction. Like to me, that's the best way because I feel like I'm getting a private lecture. And we've never met. I don't even know if we've ever spoken on the phone before. Because Andrew was so helpful.
I was on Zoom with you at one point when Andrew was supporting you, endorsing things like that. But it's nice to meet virtually, I guess.
Yeah, I am very, very impressed. Like I loved listening to the story, and a lot of it was very, very familiar. And one of the key takeaways, like that, whenever you would say "Let Yang be Yang," he and I have had this fight more times than I can count. And it's like literally the same kind of thing. So talk a little bit about what your experience was as an outsider dealing within the two-party paradigm.
Oh, man. Well, I'll even say this, is that the book, of course, is about the Yang 2020 presidential race and the journey behind it. But really, and you've now read it, Jen, and thank you for doing that. You probably... One of the bigger takeaways is that it's actually not about Andrew. It's about a bigger, more macro change in our political system, right? And so Andrew was completely anonymous, coming a complete outsider, totally grassroots, from unknown to, in a way, is a national superstar. There was a point, I think I mentioned in the book, where he was the number1 Googled man on the planet for a few minutes. He outlasted, a number, 3/4 of the Democratic Party's best and brightest, right? Including our sitting vice president and outpolling in our own state. Like, this is where this guy came to. Now, the reason that happened is not because Zach or Andrew or our staff were just some sort of geniuses or political experts. In fact, we were complete novices, knowing some things about marketing and entrepreneurship, but nothing about politics. The reason that happened is because the game is changing. And I talk about this in the book a bit, but one of the hardest parts was all the things we had to do to earn media and stand out and contend and fight for legitimacy and scream for attention, all those things. Those things started to cut the other way, particularly in the Democratic Party, when you then had to line up the party with more traditional voters, and they cut the wrong way at times. So that balance of authenticity, which is really a balance between like seriousness and real and maybe more loose or off the cuff. It's hard. It's really hard. Every candidate has it, but us in particular, having to compete such a crowded field. There were some things we did that trailblazed, and other things we did that I probably wouldn't recommend at times. So,
whipped cream.
No, but timing is everything. I loved hearing about what was going on with you guys dealing with the debates and the whole thing about the tie and the whole thing, because like that is totally the kind of stuff that we're dealing with at every single level. The fact that you want to bring something different, but yet you're trying to do that within that square box. So, and it's so difficult. Like we're really navigating this very weird, like fine line. And I really would like to just be in a different box. You know what I'm saying? Like, like that's what we're really wanting to get to, where we don't have to be within, because most people appreciate authenticity. Most people, when you just talk to them and you're nice and personable, like someone like Andrew, they're just going to like him. They're just going to like him. And that is something that is, I think, is what we need to be focused on. And the party keeps that from happening.
Well, your point, the key words you just said were most people. And that's actually the challenge. And it's one you faced head on, frankly, is that most people don't vote in a primary. Exactly. Most people aren't paying attention to politics. Most people could care less. The problem is those who vote in a race that you're running, or in a New York City mayoral race, or in some ways at Iowa or New Hampshire presidential primary, although those are a little bit broader. But most people are not voting in those. So the people who are usually like team Democrat, like they're team Republican. What does that mean? Like I actually coincidentally like wrote a mini thesis on this in college, and how being a Republican and voting for a Republican and voting for a Democrat is the same thing as rooting for the Red Sox or the Yankees. It's actually gotten worse since when I graduated school, but I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and there's nothing. Tom Brady's probably the greatest quarterback in the world, but there's nothing you can say to me or no evidence to the contrary to convince me that he's cool or he's good at football.
I loathe him. You have come to the right place. Begrudged, unhappy Dolphins fan. There is nothing I hate more than Tom Brady. Like,
and he's amazing, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I don't care.
Don't care. But that's politics, right? There's nothing you like. The Republicans are the bad guys. They're evil. And in these primaries, you as the challenger, or Andrew in my case, was he gets framed as whoa, he's either too much like the right or he's too different or that. And it's you're not talking about the average person. You're talking about the average voter, and you're actually specifically talking about the average primary voter. And those are different. And that was a learning curve for me, for sure. And it's one of the reasons why, frankly, political consultants just kind of speak the same language, because that's how it works. And it sucks, and you guys have lived it. But we honestly, Andrew, with the Forward Party is probably the only thing I've seen to someone at least offering a solution to trying to fix that. Because you have to open them up, or else you're just going to have the same people voting for the same people over and over, right?
Yeah.
We're speaking with Zach Graumann, author of Longshot. I think one of the things that became very unnerving in many ways, because I thought Andrew did an amazing job really honing in on UBI when he ran for president. But when he ran for mayor, and he had to take on somewhat of a different dynamic, identifying with all of the things that is involved with being the mayor of the biggest city in the country.
That's the last chapter of the book, is about the mayoral race. Go on. Sorry, I digress.
And what you learn is that one of the biggest reasons why such a terrible mayor is running New York City right now is because there was a collective effort amongst what I would call the rabid left, not extreme or anything like that. It's just this overreactive left is the best way to describe it. Andrew had a very bad take on Israel, but at the time the attitude was, well, because he had a bad take on Israel, let's just cancel him altogether. Let's tell people don't rank Yang, became a thing, but rank Adams instead. And now as a result of that, you're going to have one of the worst mayors New York City's ever seen. And that could have been avoided if there wasn't this knee-jerk reaction of maybe not all of Andrew's takes are good. And as he said when he came on our podcast, I can be right with progressives on 20 issues, but if I'm wrong on the 21st, I'm finished.
That's it. They're done. That's it.
And that to me is the biggest indictment of the left, is this idea that it is a purity test, and that will get us nowhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's, it's in California, the Democrats own everything, right? Up and down the state legislature to, congressional reps, senators, et cetera. But they voted against Medicare for all or fixing healthcare. We can't get out of our own way. Now I'll say a couple of things. I get to caveat because I had in politics, what's called a dream role, which is the dream role of senior advisor. And when you're a senior advisor, you get to take all the credit if you win and none of the blame if you lose. That's why it's a dream role. So
it wasn't your campaign.
If Andrew had won for mayor, I'd be like, I led that thing. I was the genius.
Heads I win, tails you lose.
Yes. And because he lost, I got to be like, whoa, just a senior advisor here. Let's be honest. The reality was, involved, but definitely not as heavy as the presidential, and it was more on debate and some comms stuff. But Andrew is his own comms guy, and that's where you see takes on Twitter, and he can be susceptible to sometimes certain experts around him that are only, he's not always getting the full picture given that he's a human being, right? So I would say, but the mayor race, man, I learned so much about local politics just watching that race closely because I never had. It's a tough race in general. I mean, everybody hates Bill de Blasio, but no one voted for him. It's like 9% of the city actually votes in that primary.
That's the worst.
Yeah. So and that primary is in June after a presidential race. So everybody's electioned out, if you will. And actually, if you wanted to switch parties or get involved, you pretty much got to do that in February. So it's very much the establishment race. But I'll say, talk about people who are on Team Democrat or following suit. So I've said this on Sagar and Jetty's podcast, and they're talking about this race. So there was Catherine Garcia she was running for mayor. She was the former head of sanitation under Bill de Blasio. So I wanted you to think about this. Bill de Blasio, most hated mayor of all time, at least at the time. And the number 2 issue in New York City, at least actually number 1 before the crime epidemic post-COVID, was trash. Everybody was pissed off about the trash. So this woman is the sanitation head and in charge of the trash, and is not particularly charismatic. She's not a compelling speaker. She wasn't a great debater. There was not a lot going for her. And as a result, she wasn't raising a lot of money. She was polling at 1 to 2%. That's what's happening.
There is one little caveat.
There's
one little caveat I also want to throw in that I know you weren't going to mention, but I really thought was really seedy at the time. She uses the last name Garcia. She is no longer married to the man whose last name was Garcia.
There it is. Yeah.
And she's not Latino.
She is not. She is not.
Okay, sorry.
No, great. Add on. This is what you're talking about. Okay, cool. And then the New York Times says, this is our pick. And she goes from 2% to 23%, essentially overnight. And that's the game, right? It's New York Times readers and followers and essentially local news watchers. That's most of the there's Republicans thrown in the local news category, but that's pretty much the game. So it's tough to I think Andrew, given the crime spike, an outsider, a lot of his message going into it was less compelling, given that the environment shifting. I talk about that in the book, but that I don't know if Andrew's going to come out of that race, even if he ran a perfect race, and I don't think we did, obviously. So, but yeah, man, learned a lot.
I think a lot of it also is it's not necessarily the best role for him to be in is as a mayor, given what. Grateful. No, I think that he has so much broader appeal and capability. I think the reason that you were able to be so successful with the Yang Gang is the diversity across the country and all that. And unfortunately, that kind of, tribe, like you called, I always say that too, but that doesn't necessarily equate to local voters in a local mayoral race. It's just the national appeal. Yeah. But they're not who's voting in that race. That's the only problem.
He had more donors in the history of the mayoral race, and he had more donors in New York City in the history of the mayoral race. Think about that.
But they didn't vote.
A lot of people didn't vote.
Right.
And it's tough. There's some obstacles to that, but it's also like, where did he come from? He came from the internet. He came from the average person. He was the politician. He was the anti-politician in many ways. That doesn't equate. That equates to momentum and crowd size and fundraising and a lot of things, but doesn't always equate to votes. Now, Andrew, in like a let's call it a less crowded field, there's like one or two candidates, you're able to get more traditional Democratic voters or things like that. But there was a lot of flavors when he ran for both mayor and president. So it's different.
New York City, I'm from New Jersey. One thing about New York City is that it really shows in many ways the problem at the worst level of the Democratic Party machine. You see it in Chicago, you see it even in Los Angeles, where it doesn't really matter whether you're a great candidate or not. It just matters how entrenched you are within the machine. And seeing that Adams and Garcia were able to get where they got, one was the head of the Department of Sanitation, the other was the Brooklyn Borough president. There really is this systemic machine control that runs from, it could be the lowest, person at City Hall to, somebody like de Blasio, who was obviously putting his thumb on the scale behind the scenes. It does make it very difficult to run. But the one thing that we did notice, in particular in the New York races, was that a lot of the non-corporate candidates, whether it was especially at the city council level, at the state assembly level, whether they were supported by the Sunrise Movement, DSA, or the Working Families Party, a lot of these non-corporate candidates were actually able to break through. And I'm thinking one of the strategies that really is not given enough attention and not enough people are doing, and Jen and I, we're working on a project right now here in Florida where everyone gets so ramped up for the presidential race or the big mayoral race or the U.S. Senate race. Those are almost impossible to win. But these state races, these city council races, they're not only, you don't even have not only the ability to win, but they don't even cost a fraction of the money. So there's a lot of people who probably could be involved and really have an impact, but they're choosing to just say, well, I'm just going to run for Congress. And believe me, my friend, we know a lot of people like that who do not have the financial infrastructure or the support network.
Well, we were those people.
But we were able to raise almost $400,000 on a first run and get almost 30% of the vote. Most people, you got a lot of people who are just getting in there with no money and no infrastructure. And I'm thinking, I'm not trying to tell you that you should just be running at this level. But what I am saying is that you need this infrastructure if you even want to have a puncher's chance at it. And at this point, I feel like, especially in the non-corporate movement, we cannot waste any more time. Would you agree?
Generally, yeah, I do agree. I mean, you're coming from a guy that we just said, hey, let's run for president. Let's just shoot for the top out the gate. What's the answer to this? The reality is, no one wants to say it, but it's true. It's all about the money. That's the game. And it's a money game. And it's just like everything. Everything's about business at the end of the day. It's about the money. And I don't mean that's not good or bad. It just is. I'm not trying to be skeptical or a cynic. It just is. I would say a lot of the pushback on Andrew was he didn't talk like a traditional Democrat at times or many times, which was part of it. But a lot of it was the outsider piece, right? Like there in politics, there's a system. It's a hierarchy, right? Like you start at the very local level and you work in your city and then you go to state and then you go to maybe, you keep going that way. And you develop relationships with the press and the traditional donors and the traditional players so that when you do shoot for the congressional seat or the hot Senate seat or whatever, you're more of a known quantity or a known commodity, then the press is less likely to attack you, at least initially, right? Because they're familiar with you and you have some relationships. There's pros and cons to that, right? I think the hardest part it is about the money. And this is the hardest part. My favorite example is Cory Booker. Like if you look at Cory Booker as mayor of Newark out the gate, like what a badass, right? This guy's coming in, inspiring. I'm gonna clean up streets, felt independent and raw and authentic. Like this is the next Obama. Like let's go. And now Senator Cory Booker is now like, how does he raise his money? he has to go to very, very wealthy people who are traditional donors of the Democratic Party. And now when he talks, he's still like an inspiring individual, but it's watered down. It's nowhere near as revolutionary or out of the box. It's pretty much down the middle, right? He's a very solid moderate now. And so I say that as someone who likes Corey as a person, right? I met him, we hung out a bunch of times on the campaign. So I would say this, and that's probably where you're getting at, is if advising somebody to run for office, I would start with something real small, like get that city council, get that local state rep, something real small, because it's not a ton of money. You have to quit your job. You might be able to, you don't have to necessarily outflank someone super far left or right. Like, you've got some options there. And then decide your path, because you're going to meet a ton of people, be able to do it like almost like politics light a little bit, and then take your big shot. But I agree with you that the foreign part is like, and why we ran for president is like, we didn't think we had enough time. Like, we don't have enough time for Andrew to have a 15-year political career to make UBI like a political option,
Yeah, one of the things I always said about Andrew, and it's, I don't have to agree with him on everything, but the thing that matters the most, and this is what I really want to like emphasize the most to people, is like, they are so prone to just vote with whoever the slick talking politician is. But the problem is that that person is generally vapid and is just saying whatever they think they need to say to get you to vote for them. But when you vote for an actual person that just uses reason and judgment, you don't need to agree with them on everything, because they're going to govern with reason and judgment. And it's like, I don't understand why people can't grasp that that's what we want. We want people. And what I like about Andrew in particular is he doesn't feel the need to be the smartest person in the room at all times, and is somebody who is reasonable and listens to advice, and people who he knows that there's people that know more than him about certain things. And I think that's what you want in someone who's in an executive position. You want someone to surround themselves with really smart people that they don't, because they don't know everything, right, and just use good judgment. It's really not that complicated.
Oh yeah, Andrew's a real human being, and shows emotions and humanity many times in the trail, and not a politician, not a trained politician, not a work politician. And I think Mac just commented, the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party changes you, or what he said was, but I'm thinking, like, we've talked about this a bit. If you look at the incentives of a politician, they are to eventually become plain vanilla. Like, that's what ends up happening, because anytime you say something out of line or out of the box or controversial, you get hammered. You get hammered with your donors and your constituents and your, the people you're trying to get things done with, and the press and XYZ, right? And so eventually that's painful as a human. It's not fun to be, even if you're right, even if you're doing the right thing, even if the vast majority of people are agreeing with you, if you're getting a bunch of hate and people cutting that way, it's not fun. And so as humans, they end up in kind of this, terrified to make a mistake type politician, and that's tough. And we're all sick of it, but the system itself doesn't really allow for that. So part of what I talk about in the book is how the game is changing. There are cracks in this, particularly at the national level. Like, you're starting to see alternative media strategies work. You're starting to see social media actually correlate to votes and money and things like that. But it's not there yet, right? We're not there. You're still seeing, particularly at a local level, you're still seeing a lot of the, quote, powers that be and the traditional gatekeepers of power still have a pretty outsized influence.
One of the things that happened during the mayoral race that, to me, really is what defined it in so many respects, was when Andrew kind of had the idea towards the final weeks that it probably wasn't going to happen. He was making a concerted effort to push for Catherine Garcia to become the mayor by saying, well, look, if you're going to rank me first, please rank her second, because we do not want to have a mayor like Mayor Adams. He was the only person who was employing the strategy of, let's change the game. Let's utilize ranked choice voting for what it's worth, which is, let's not be in a situation where we have to choose the lesser of two evils. Right. Let's allow ourselves to have more of a choice. And he was the only candidate running who was doing that. And I'm thinking, it may not be the way it is now, but it's going to eventually be that way, because that's the only way things are going to change. Ranked choice voting and open primaries, as the Forward Party is pushing, we believe, will change the electoral infrastructure in the United States.
very much agree. I think the proof's in the pudding. I thought that the candidates were generally nicer to each other and more compromising in that mayoral race, as as ugly as those types of races can get. And look, the reality was, like, the city overwhelmingly voted for Eric. It wasn't, he was ranked pretty high in every round. Like, we could say what we want about the guy and his background and what he's doing now, but the reality was a lot of people when the crime is rising, they really wanted a cop as the mayor, right? And that was a really compelling pitch. I think ranked choice voting worked then. Like, they may have, people may have buyer's remorse or whatever it is, which tends to happen with the New York City mayor's race. People tend to blame the mayor for lots of things, especially when the city's kind of nasty right now and recovering. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's Andrew's big thing now, and he's right, and he learned this, and I learned this with him. It's like, you can nitpick the candidate all you want, right? We're like, oh, should have said this, shouldn't have tweeted that, shouldn't have done this, should have handled this, should have gone to this stage, blah, 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 blah. The reality is we have a system that's cutting the wrong way. Like, we have a system that's going to prioritize the either the extremes or the vanilla, right? Right? It was like, and you had that with Trump and Biden, right? In a way. But you see that up and down the ballot. So I agree with you on ranked choice voting and open primaries. It would just make the system more interesting, frankly, and easier, Jen, for you to run. Like, you're not fighting an uphill battle at every step, right?
Yeah. Well, if we had open primaries here, she would have been gone so long ago. Like, honestly, if we had open primaries here, because the independents and the Republicans hate her. And they, most people don't understand why she's there. Like, we'll go to people that are in more conservative area or whatever, and we'll be talking to them. And they don't know that, we have closed primaries, so they don't even get a say-so. And the reason she sits there is because we have closed primaries, and nobody knows this. And they don't want to change their registration just for one election. And that's the biggest.
That's also a pain, right? The fact that you have to register. The whole thing's nonsense. And you end up with these one-party states. New York and California is the worst example, where everybody there is blue. And so there's nothing changes. Nothing has to change because there's no risk the only risk is getting outflanked to the left.
Right.
And while the rest of us are like, and look, Nellie Bowles wrote a fantastic piece in the Atlantic. I hate when people say stuff like, oh, so-and-so read this in the Atlantic, but it is dynamite. She wrote about how San Francisco is a failed city, and it is. And it's because a lot of things we're talking about. It's just a breakdown. It's awful.
Yeah.
This is the biggest thing I say about Andrew. It's like, do I agree with everything? No, of course not. He's a human being. I disagree on plenty of things. But do I respect him? Yeah, I respect the hell out of him, because he said this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to move to universal basic income. Someone needs to run for president. He's like, the right thing to do to start a third party. And people are going to shit on him all the time. Fine. But is he right? Probably. In my opinion, yes. So time will tell, but I found like history's been pretty favorable to Andrew Yang's policies, at least. So, and I talk about that in the book. It's like, this is the new norm. Like, identity branding and this authenticity overall, and the game changing. This is where we're going.
Yeah, I agree. And we had Jesse Ventura was on the other night, and we were talking with him a lot. And one of the things that he said that we've said from the beginning is that if any third party is going to have some sort of chance, it's going to be what Andrew's doing, because he's somebody that can actually see the strategy of how to get it done. Yeah. And not just host events with big name speakers and then do nothing.
They have a nice website with a lot of big names.
Right.
That's that. Yeah.
Right. And so what what Jesse said to us is, well, if I can get on the ballot, then I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And so that I think is a very good goal. And I'm thinking and he said he spoke with Andrew about.
Yeah, they've been chatting. I think Jesse's a fascinating. So I was talking to Andrew about the issue with the third parties. You need it's the same issue we had with universal basic income. You need a messenger.
Yeah.
You need a human being that we can identify with and connect with. And that's hard because most people with the ability to do it are pretty much entrenched on one side or the other. And then you have the billionaires who, there's pros and cons to bringing in certain types of billionaires running for office, but it could fund their own race, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Jesse would be in the category the small handful of folks that, if they took a crack at it, they could make some noise. And if anything, to me, like Andrew's like on record saying, I'm not gonna like. I think he thinks Trump is disruptive to the system. He's not gonna try and ruin it for because I think his route is more Biden than Trump, right? But if anything, a strong third-party candidate is going to bring awareness to the fact that our system's so busted. I think a lot of people are warming up to that as we speak.
Yeah.
I think if Jesse runs, he will run to win. I think that it's been a generation since Ross Perot really shook things up. Unfortunately, he was not the right person in terms of trying to build out that infrastructure. He had his own motivations as to why he did it. And if he actually ran a really well-structured campaign, he might have shocked the world, but he didn't. In fact, I think a lot of people forget that Perot dropped out of the race at the beginning of the summer and then managed to get back in at the end.
I remember.
But I can tell you, of all the people that my father is self-made, he literally came from nothing and has done pretty well for himself. In all the years that I've been following politics, there was no one, and I mean no one, that he was enthusiastic about supporting other than Ross Perot in 92. And I am almost assured that if there was like this really galvanizing outside the two-party duopoly person like a Jesse.
Well, he's won as an independent.
Yeah.
Like that's been proven that he was able to do that. There's not a lot of people that actually have that record.
And you don't really know it until you're in the moment, but you can kind of see, and especially being in it, the restlessness amongst the populace that people are really tired of this. They know how the game is played now in a way that maybe they didn't even realize before. They know that the Democrats are basically paid losers, that you could get so much stuff done right now. There's always a built-in excuse. There's never the use of the bully pulpit, something as simple as that. And I think people say, well, you know what? Enough of this crap. Now we know why we got Trump in the first place.
I wish more people knew that.
Yeah. I mean, if you had a bigger... The other thing is that the Democrats are like, we get Trump out of there, all's going to be well, and now things are awful, right? And so that's not helping. I mean, one of the things that's crazy, if you look at the numbers, is Roe v. Wade gets overturned, right, essentially. And an action like that normally would spike massive protests and donations and grassroots support and anger and riots in the street. And the numbers from the ACLU and Planned Parenthood and a lot of the women's movements, like minimal. Like people are just fed up. They're tired. They know it's not going to work. They're tired of wasting their money. And it's like we're all seeing like nothing helps. Like I can pick the asshole that is Donald Trump, or I can pick the Democrats who are going to talk a somewhat nice game and not do anything. Like that's our choices, and everybody hates it. So. Anyway, I think Andrew, the forward part needs a compelling candidate. I love Andrew, but I think he would come with probably more baggage than you'd want in that candidate. You'd want someone new who also didn't found the party, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And he's also somebody that, like, while I fully think he would be capable of doing that job, I just feel like there's so many more influential, powerful positions for him to be playing than being sort of the face of something. I just think that, he's just very effective at getting things done.
Yeah. I mean, look, we looked at, exploring working in the White House and various, whether it's a cabinet role or just, there's other types of roles you can work in there. And none of that was appealing to Andrew or frankly myself. Like those jobs are pretty awful. No offense to anyone who lives in DC and works in there, but you kind of know your job stuff. We would just talk to people at what they were doing and what the day-to-day was. And the most I got out of people were that they would write white papers. And they talked about them like they were big deals. And I'm like, man, no one has ever read that white paper. No one will ever care about that white paper.
Nobody cares.
So it's tough. But yeah, I mean, look, Andrew's super young. Like he's 47 or whatever. He's got a pretty bright future. And the thing about Andrew is he cares and he's a man of action, right? Which I do always respect. Like he will not sit on his hands. He refuses to. So yeah, we'll be stuck with him doing crazy shit, trying to fix his place for a while. I think that's a good, accurate prediction for the future.
What was your motivation to write the book, and what are you hoping people get out of it?
Yeah, so it's probably two things. One, so Andrew when we finished the race, Andrew's like, I'm writing a book. I'm like, great. And then he's like, and I'm like, what's it about? And in traditional Andrew Yang fashion, it's like logical, numbers oriented, and solutions oriented about the breaking two-party system and how we fix our duopoly, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Is anyone going to write a book about, I don't know, the cool campaign that just happened and what it means? So that was like part of it. I was like, well, maybe I should tell the story of the campaign. But the bigger reason is the why. And the why is there's a reason that, the first 4 or 5 people we had in the campaign, self-included, had 0 years of combined political experience. And this man was completely anonymous and a political novice. And there's a reason he was able to contend at the highest levels. And it's because we were playing a different game. We were focused on the attention economy, which is the all-out war for our attention that we navigate every single day, right? We knew we weren't just competing with Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and Liz Warren, the usual suspects. We knew we were competing against Taylor Swift and the Kardashians and Game of Thrones and your friend's text messages and Target's most recent email, whatever it is. We had to be more interesting, not just than the other candidates, but then what else was hitting you and fighting for your attention every day. So the tactics we took to brand him and build our tribe and let our community in is stuff that can be used across business, politics, nonprofits. And it's stuff I just thought people should know, that we tried a whole bunch of things. A bunch didn't work, but a bunch did. And this was meant to be sort of a playbook for folks either running for office or building something. How do you stand out how do you compete when you're not supposed to? So, that was the why. And then it is funny. I'm not funny, but the stories are funny. If that makes sense, Jen?
I think, you know what? I think you're funny, but what I thought was even more interesting is you are very similar. Like when I'm listening to you talk, I could really hear that you have this sort of similar to Andrew nerd background going on here. Like you guys are really on the same wavelength, like kind of nerd humor.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and if I talk to folks that like Carly or Shelby or some of the folks that were there from the beginning, but at the senior level, they would tell you, like, me and Andrew, like, we disagreed all the time, but we were very clear-eyed on how to run for office this way, right? Hell or high water, we're not gonna play the same game. And I think it's because in the beginning we tried to play that game. We tried to do the traditional fundraisers. We got one of the biggest Democratic bundlers to throw a fundraiser for us early on, and it was a total bust. Like, we would do the traditional game. We tried to get endorsements. It was awful. And then we're like, screw it. Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, like these Breakfast Club, the podcasts, the rallies, we started playing our own game. And, we focus on Elon Musk and embracing an Elon Musk endorsement rather than whatever insert politician was going to endorse us. So it's easier on a national scale. Like, some of the stuff is not as applicable on a local level. But some of it does apply. As you probably could think of, Jen, as you were running. Like, and I feel like you did a good amount of them too. Like, to have the success you had, you got to find your lane. You got to find your supporters. You got to let them in, right, and feel connected to you.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, the book resonated with me. We were really on like a micro level of what you were talking about, what we were dealing with. And I decided from the very beginning, I wasn't as, we're going to win. I was a lot more realistic. Like, I knew that we were likely not going to win. I was infinitely more prepared to lose than to win. But what we really wanted to do was create a coalition, start building a movement, start having like what you call your tribe and getting that going. And I decided we were going to do a service campaign. I said, we're going to just create community service. We're going to have all of our volunteers did service. We were a service campaign. And so I spent 18 months building up this idea that representation is service, and we're going to show you what that looks like. This is what your representative should be doing, is serving the community. And that resonated with people, and it outlasted the campaign, which is exactly what you're talking about with doing. So like, I didn't think of it in terms of branding, although that basically is what it is we branded ourselves a service-based campaign, and that's the lane we went in. But yeah, we essentially did something that outlasted one candidate's campaign, which was that was my goal. Like that was sort of what I was thinking, because I was infinitely more prepared to lose than to win.
Did you, when you were fundraising, did you say to particularly like larger donors or more influential people in your community, like, hey, back me now because I may not win, but I'm going to create something for a long haul or run again in the future? Like, was there that element of fundraising? I feel like that a lot of first-time candidates have to like sell the long-term vision.
Yeah. Maybe I would have more, but I will say in all seriousness, and I don't say this like lightly, she has a lot of haters. And
you probably found a whole bunch of low-hanging fruit.
See, that's the thing. And there was a lot of people with money that just hate her. Yeah. And so we did get that. But I learned very early on, we hired a finance person and I did call time and we were doing that. And it was yielding nothing. It was yielding nothing because you can't build a grassroots campaign with old school large dollar fundraising techniques. Like they're not going to work. And it never worked for us that way.
The traditional Democratic donor also much different than the Republican donor. They do not want any primaries. They see that as a persona non grata in politics, even to the worst of the worst Democrats. The Democrats as a party have the mentality of play not to lose, whereas the GOP plays to win. And very often they don't see the forest through the trees. What I try to explain to people very often, especially with somebody like Wasserman Schultz, Florida was a swing state, but it really is a red state. And it really is being solidified now. And if DeSantis wins by at least 5 points or more, which right now it looks like he will, then you're really going to have this argument of whatever you've been doing for the past several years from the point in which 2008, Barack Obama won the state of Florida by 3 points. But prior to, Florida has only gone blue twice in a presidential election since 1992. So it goes without saying that the old guard has to go, but it takes a long time for people to see that. And so if somebody like Jen, for example, was the most visible political figure in South Florida versus a Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that would have a tremendous impact on independent voters. They would feel a lot more comfortable supporting a Democratic candidate that Jen is behind versus somebody that Debbie's behind. In fact, we believe that the only reason why DeSantis is trending to become President DeSantis right now is because Andrew Gillum made horrific mistakes once he became the nominee of the Democratic Party.
Did you look at his campaign at all, just from a campaign perspective, Andrew Gillum?
Andrew Gillum or DeSantis?
Gillum.
Not as much, no. I have a lot more familiar. My parents live in Florida, so I'm familiar. I follow DeSantis pretty closely because I think he navigates the attention economy better than most. But go ahead.
But
100%.
Gillum, it's sort of like we're actually working on a little book based on what we went through and really sort of like a play-by-play handbook situation. And one of the things we're talking about is that's a cautionary tale, what happened with Andrew Gillum. So he came out in the primary, very solid progressive, had the backing of like grassroots, had coalitions and progressives behind him. And he was able to beat who was favored, which was Gwen Graham, like a legacy type of candidate, right? And then as soon as he wins that primary, he dismisses his entire team and starts calling in like the DC consultant people. And the next thing you know, he's running in the general, coming down here to South Florida with Michael Bloomberg and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a yarmulke on his head. And that was it. And that was like, that's the direction he went. And all of the people that supported him in the primary, all the progressives, didn't come out and vote for him in the general.
What made it even worse was that he did it in Century Village in Pembroke Pines, Broward County. You don't need to be chasing votes here. This is supposed to be like
he's chasing money there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just the whole thing. Like I felt like we were watching it almost like a train wreck in slow motion imploding.
I didn't even see it so much happen during the election. But what Florida has been known for many years is that if you're in the general election and you have a wide appeal, your focus needs to be on places like Pinellas and Hillsborough County out in the Tampa Bay area. Those at Hillsborough County in particular was the county that broke hardest in terms of a swing county for Trump in 2016 that ultimately got him Florida and was really the difference in him becoming president. And the fact that they were making those decisions that seemed so like wrong.
Well, I think they were sabotaging him, actually. I actually think the Democratic establishment, when he won the primary, I think that scared them.
Maybe.
I think they actually preferred DeSantis. And I think they jumped on board and just sabotaged him because the truth is they'd prefer DeSantis than Gillum.
You almost have
You're
to.
implying a lot of competence that I don't know.
That's true. You're right. I'm implying
Hey.
nefariousness as opposed to
But
negligence.
the thing that we've noticed that I think you've probably noticed as well is that we highly question a lot of the decisions that have been made, let's just say in the Biden administration. And if they are heading for a colossal disaster in the midterms, which right now that is what is tracking, the thought process is, okay, it'll be an electoral disaster, but that'll give us an opportunity to raise a lot of money beating back against the GOP.
Right.
And they're not raising as much anymore. So who knows what happens next? Here's what I will say. There's this massive gulf in the United States of America political spectrum. And I say this as someone I try not to talk too much politics. I'm trying to get out of it because I think I don't think I'm the best messenger for it, and it's pretty rough. But I'll say you've got the far left, the purists, where they have the moral, let's call it moral fight all the time to see who's can virtue signal the hardest, and it's very tough to win, right? You have that far left, and then on the right you have Trump, who's an ass, and frankly has this. But basically, the far right of the party on lock, and where the voting is happening is the moderates. It should be in the middle. But what's happening is there's a lot of stuff the government is not doing that the Democrats don't do well, and Trump is too much of a jerk about, or Trump will actually end up saying the right thing. Things like not making our kids wear masks, especially when the pandemic is over, or opening the schools up. And whether or not you have opinions on these are things that are very popular with moderate voters. Moderate voters being folks who are either independent, lean a little left, or lean a little right. And the thing about DeSantis, ignore where he stands, because a lot of things he says I do not disagree with. A lot of tactics, a lot of the way the media presents him, I obviously I don't love either. But I'll say he's done stuff in Florida that would be and are popular with Democrats, especially moderate Democrats. He bumped the minimum wage up from $8 to $10, essentially. He's put over $400 million into climate change efforts for coastal communities
Everglades.
in Florida.
Yeah.
He also got a major political win recently, thanks to the Democrats, when he vetoed the net metering bill, which is the biggest crock-ish I've ever seen.
Yeah, and so he'll take the bullet off the chin and hammer the media and get all the woke left going crazy. Moderates aren't on Twitter and don't care, and what they care about is their schools reopening and their kids and the state and the highways being clean and the things like that. And the reality is he's been objectively, by the numbers, his approval ratings are pretty good. It's high 50s, low 60s at times in terms of approval. So it sucks. But the reality is he's been you have to call him a pretty good governor for Florida in that sense. And that's what to me makes him dangerous. He understands the press game. He understands this lane. He's going to kick ass. He's outpolling Trump right now. I don't know if he'll actually run. He says he won't, but I bet he does.
DeSantis says he's not running. He said that?
Been told, it's let's put it this way. He said it off the record to people who would put it on the record that if Trump runs, he's not going to run.
He's going to fundraisers in Buffalo
and California. He's been fundraising all over the place.
He's probably running, but he's going to have to make a call, right? They're all kind of banking on Trump either falling in approval ratings or his health deteriorating. So he's doing what everyone would do if they're about to run for president.
We've been saying one of these two is your next president.
Hold on. I'm here. I'm talking. You have to let me talk. I have to talk to my fellow New Yorker. He's here. He has to understand. Well, actually, I'm not allowed in New York anymore.
You got the hand signals down, brother.
No, believe me when I tell you, I'm totally coming back in 24. And this Ron DeSantis is an ungrateful little son of a bitch. He totally took advantage of my ability to make him here in Florida. And we're totally going to deal with him. And then we're going to deal with everybody else. This January 6th committee is totally fake news. I'm an innocent guy. I never told anybody to storm the Capitol. I just told them to walk around and act like you own the place. And we came pretty close, not close enough, but we'll be back in 24.
Honestly, that's probably what he'll say. And by the way, the Democrats have been so bad, that's going to be a winning message.
Yes,
it's a really winning message because Joe is already asleep. Have you seen the time? It's not even siesta time, and he's already in bed.
And so DeSantis may raise all this money just to throw his name on the VP slot or a senior cabinet role and chill there and then run when Trump's up. Who knows? But I will say, look, Don DeSantis, he can navigate the attention economy well.
Yes.
And he does it for moderates. He enrages Twitter, but he appeals to his voters. He's doing it. His identity brand is no nonsense. I protect kids and families in my state. And
I protect everybody. I'll see you later.
All right, go away.
Like, that's him, right? And like, it sucks. But Democrats, wake up, because he's, the next leader of the country at some point if we don't get our shit together.
Our Democrats in this state actually think they're running a viable gubernatorial race against him this year. That's how delusional they are. Yes. I say it all the time, he's already won that. I don't even think he'll expend money in that race. Meanwhile,
he will, but he doesn't have to. And as I've told, as an example, DeSantis has already raised over $100 million. He's got almost a 10-1 advantage on
the next candidate.
And even though it's pretty, like, just as an example with the Democratic Party and the fact that it's so discombobulated in Florida, Charlie Crist is going to win the nomination. And yet Nikki Fried is still running. And if you really wanted to have any chance, just a puncher's chance, Nikki would probably run for another seat right now. The deadline is
she can't
tomorrow.
Run. She's not running for another seat.
And endorse Charlie, and then you would have basically a 2 plus month head start on campaigning for the general. But because that isn't happening, and because it doesn't seem like they really like each other, this is what happens if you don't have a good infrastructure. Even if DeSantis is going to win by a wide margin, you don't have a lot of solid non-corporate candidates that are running at the lower levels where we can really build that for the long term. But if you want to share with Zach what we are doing now.
Well, we are in the process of getting, a friend of ours, Adam Christensen, who ran for Congress in the middle of the state when I ran in 20, he has come up with a program that is going to make it so that we no longer need NGP. Van is not going to be anything we're going to need anymore, which I can't wait to watch their heads explode when that happens. But we just got, I want to say, we'll know Friday at the end of the day is the qualification period, but they were seeking to get 14 people on the ballot in this one slate. It's like actually the largest group of Haitians that are running as candidates in Florida. And it's all seats that they calculated were winnable, that had nobody even running in them.
Yep.
And so the Democrats are so feckless, it could be like a 2-point margin, but they're not even going to bother putting anybody in the race. And so we got, I want to say they're going to have 14 when all said and done. And running is like this solid slate of non-corporate people.
And that's where our reality is, right? Like, I think the Democrats, Republicans, like, fight all the time about the stuff that they, supposedly disagree on, but the reality is they agree on a lot of the same things, and they're very much in this game of frankly keeping us in line and not changing much. And so the local level is where you start, and really the more people that run for office is you start to normalize these things, right? Where you just have more candidates saying things that make more sense. But yeah, it's I talk about kind of the brands for the moment and identity branding down the stretch and what the future of politics. My bet is more DeSantis likes candidates who know how to navigate the media and rile up a quote unquote base. And they probably won't be able to compromise much, which is like the biggest consequence, right? Like, that's the big thing that Democrats to me, and AOC has tweeted recently that she disagrees, but to me is like, yes, we want Medicare for all, but would we take Medicare for 80%? The answer to me is yes. We have right now Medicare for 0, right? If that's the range you're playing, I would take a compromise to at least start. But we have I understand why, but to me, I'd rather have progress, not perfection, instead of what we have now, which is literally nothing, and nothing's getting done. That's my opinion. And I understand. I've heard many, many times. So please don't at me, you guys. I've heard the other argument. I understand it. I don't think it's working right now. That's my point.
Definitely not.
Yeah, when you have a broken system.
That's the key thing I took away from how you ran the campaign is you've got to ride the horse in the direction it's going, and you've got to figure it out on the fly. And you made a comparison to a carnival ride about what it's like being on a campaign. And I've said from the beginning, I've always characterized it as you're on a roller coaster, you're in the front seat, the back seat is on fire, and you got to finish the ride before the fire engulfs the front seat. Like, that's how I felt when we were doing it. And it's right. Like, there's no incremental learning. There's no learning curve. There's no time. And with everything, with hiring, firing, like, it's just.
That was so hard. And the worst part for us, like, personnel wise, we had this really core, awesome team. and people are like dear friends of mine. And, so we go from this small, outsider shop, ragtag group, and then we scale up, and you want to promote everybody, right? Because you're like, you guys been here from the beginning. But the reality is, if you're right out of college running like a digital strategy or fundraising strategy for a couple thousand people, right? That's totally different than running it for 100,000 people. And maybe a company had the opportunity to learn on the job or grow into the role. Hey, man, we could be done tomorrow, right? Like we need somebody who's an expert right now, right? And that's the balance the whole time. The analogy I use is it's a zipper ride at a carnival, where it's the one where it's literally like a zipper and you go up and down, left and right, and you have no idea which way you're going, and you're probably covered in your own puke, and the whole time because you're sick and it's disgusting. And you get off, and you're like, what just happened? That's what it felt like.
Yes.
It took, honestly, like, because COVID hit right after the race, it took me like at least 6 months to figure out like who Zach Graumann is as a human being again.
Don't you lose yourself in this. And I say, like, one of the things I've noticed is I don't care how thick your skin is, some of that shit's leaving scars. Like it's like people don't realize that even people who are very confident and have thick skin, like I've said to him, I'm like, that shit's gonna leave a mark.
You're triggered. You get triggered by this stuff, and then you end up doing the most risk averse thing you can because you don't want the hate. It sucks. It sucks to piss people off. I mean, if you're a politician, you kind of want to be loved. Like, you're trying to win the admiration of all these voters and people and be a leader. And leaders like to be followed, right? Like, and so like this isn't breaking news. This is how it works, and that's what happens. It's really tough. The hardest part to me when I'm looking at the future here is like something's got to give. I don't know what that is, right? We have too many things going wrong, not enough things happening to fix it. And we're losing trust in everything. Like all these things. You call it the fall of the empire. I'm not sure, but I don't know what gives. I'm hoping it's the two-party system is what gives before like social unrest gives. But I don't know. People like you guys will be front row, so you'll tell me, I guess.
I've already told him. I already told him. I'm like, if we do this again in 24, you're the person that I want. Like, I want you to come. Like, just listening to how you like the way you, it's just
deputy campaign
like we did it, the two of us together. Like we were like yin and yang. Like that was us. Like we didn't know what we were doing.
Are you doing it, or you're like on the fence? What's your
plan?
Don't say yet.
I'm not. Well, not this year, for sure. No, but 24 is a lot. I knew this year was going to be a shit show, and I wasn't willing to run a grassroots campaign without knowing my district lines. And I honestly think people that did that, they're nuts. I would not have been able to do that.
Should have saved money. Should have been saving money for when it makes sense.
Yeah,
you can start fundraising now, which is what a lot of folks do, and they start hinting, "I might run. You should do it."
Well, you know what?
The problem is you have to talk in favors. That sucks. You're like, get on the ground floor. And that, by the way, to your point before, that's what Republicans do. They say, "Hey, you want me to support you? What are you gonna do for my business?" And they're like, "Well, I'll stay out of your hair. I'll fight for this register." Like, they're like, it's all about what do you do for me? They're like, great. And then they introduce them all their friends because they're gonna make us rich. That's what they do. I've been in the rooms. That's how they do it. Democrats, the opposite. They're like, what are you gonna do that's right? What are you gonna do that's morally right? And I understand why they say that because they're trying to be the good guys. But how many times we gotta get our asses kicked until we realize we have to play the same game they're playing? I don't know, and people get mad at me for that, but it's like I'm more of a realist, I guess.
That's the thing.
And the amazing thing is, you can do it without selling out.
Yes.
People do not understand that radical. It's not even the word radical's not even the right word, but just truth tellers in politics. That is where you need to be today.
Yeah.
Just
that's
speaking
a good point.
The truth to power.
It's probably, some good advice is for folks trying to run for office now is that you do not have to go party line on everything. And I say party line meaning either moderate party line or progressive party line. You can say, and Andrew navigated this relatively well, to the extent that he could with, the forces against him, but saying, I think the Green New Deal is an awesome idea, but it's probably too expensive and not realistic, and I'd probably take 80% of it. What's great. You could say stuff like, I believe Medicare for all, but I'm also into Medicare for all who want it, like Pete Buttigieg. I'm also super pro XYZ on the far left, and I'm more moderate on this. You don't have to take the wing, because people, we are rational, somewhat rational human beings, but there are people, like especially the average person, is able to hold two thoughts at once, right? So, I think, and as long as you're authentic about it, you're able to do so. And I think the Republicans are navigating that better than others. I thought Youngkin, I thought, did a really good job in Virginia, being able to say, like, I don't like Trump, but I understand he's got this thing in the party, and here's what I agree with, and here's what I disagree with, and this is why I want to be your gut. Like, that sort of aspect, as opposed to just falling in line behind feeling like a robot, right?
Well, I'll tell you, you're gonna if you watch either from the green or you just go on YouTube after this conversation ends, we have two wonderful candidates that are coming on that are in high school running for state house in Ohio, and I still think one of the
that's what we're saying,
and
that's
one
what
of
we're talking about.
And we talked about this earlier. Probably the biggest problem, as much as anything, with the Democratic Party right now is that you have multi-generational heads of the party that are in their 80s, and they are as corporate owned as you can possibly be, and they are not giving up that power.
No, they have to die there. They're dying on those seats.
Isn't that wild too? Like, when's the last time how often you talk to an 80-year-old? My grandma's 90, right? She doesn't read her emails. She barely can text. Like that.
Like Dianne Feinstein. Yeah, she can barely keep her head up.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Guys.
Hey, Sam. I just got a message from Sam who's joining.
Yeah.
I don't know where Ohio 56 is. Where is that? I'm sorry for
56.
It's outside. It's like northeast of Cincinnati.
Yeah. I also, I'll tell you this quick story, and Andrew and I still laugh about it. We were laughing about it today. I spoke at all every camp. The Ohio Democratic Party had an event around the Ohio debate in 2019, before the 2020 race. And they did an event at some restaurant, and every campaign sent a representative to speak on behalf, what their candidate was about. And Kamala Harris sent her husband, and Chasten spoke from Pete Buttigieg's team. Like, it was a significant other or campaign manager. So I went and I spoke, and I just gave Yang's stump speech, essentially, pretty much, because I helped write it. Like, I just verbatim gave his stump speech, and it crashed and burned so badly because I'm not Andrew. I'm not an Asian man. The joke that really didn't land was the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. That went awful. And so the takeaway, especially you guys, Sam, and running for, be authentically you. That's, it wasn't authentic me speech. Every time I spoke after that, I'm just going to say why I like Andrew. I'm not giving his freaking stump speech. It's his speech, right? So, it was awful. Sam, it was terrible. I'm glad I don't think it exists. This is the only reference to it publicly. Sorry. But, yeah, terrible experience.
You have done a phenomenal job. You want to say the man behind Andrew, but your ideas, what you guys have been working on, has been immensely important. As I tell everybody, regardless of whether or not you support Andrew or not, no one, and I mean no one, had a bigger impact in making Jen a viable candidate in this first go around as a congressional candidate than the Yang Gang.
Yeah, they're asking. It's nice to know at least Jen welcomes Yang advocates. Yang is the only other person besides Bernie that I would have voted for. I've been very clear about that. Like, I've always liked Yang Gang, and remember at Orlando, they had the best food. At the convention, the Yang Gang had the best food. So, donuts are important.
In terms of phone banking,
canvassing, for sure.
Everything, you guys really have an amazing group of supporters.
It was really wholesome.
And it's a family. It really is. Yeah. And there is, guys, if you want to talk about a melting pot of all different walks of life and no judgment, if you're part of the Yang Gang, you're part of a family.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like, that is and especially nowadays, because it's all about, as Jen likes to say, reason, passion, and justice. That's what the group is about. That's what you represent. Guys, if you do not currently have your copy of Longshot by Zach Graumann, we highly recommend that you get it.
I just finished it today, guys, and Zach does his own narrating on the Audible, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Stuck with me.
Well, we hope to be. And as one of our supporters said, will you come back again in the future? We would love to have you again down the road.
I'd love to come back. This was fun. I honestly thought, I was like, I'll bore him after 30 minutes, and we went for almost 40. So that's great. So thank you all for having me.
We'll do like a Super Bowl one. We'll have Zach, Andrew, and Jesse Ventura.
Oh my God, I'd have a breakdown.
That would be a team. That would be one thing.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Congrats on everything. We'll talk soon.
Same to you, brother. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
So we now are bringing our wonderful guests, Sam Lawrence and Sam Cao, from the wonderful state of Ohio that we were just in and wish we were there under
He
better
needs to tell us.
circumstances.
Sam C. I'm going to call him Sam C. Needs to tell us how you pronounce, because you just butchered his name. I'm going to say.
Yeah. So I go by, yeah, that works too. But our catchphrase is "Holy cow." So I also go by Sam Cao. That's
I said Cao.
Yeah, but that's correct. So he had it right.
Yeah, it's all right. Like anyway, but yeah,
we'll go with Sam Cao.
Yeah, Sam Cao.
Yeah.
I'm used. Yeah.
But you know what? That's the thing. Like today, like when I go and there's people that from countries whose names are hard for us to pronounce, and they just dub themselves with some stupid gringo name so that the rest of us don't have to sit there and jump through hoops.
Mm.
And I actually I want to at least hear what it's supposed to be, and then I can decide whether or not my gringo mouth can actually say it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I prefer Sam Cao because it's what I've been used to all my life, and also like our Holy Cow just doesn't work as well.
I like Holy. Well, either
Holy
way.
Cow, and then Sam Lawrence is just Stand with Sam.
So it is kind of funny that you guys have the same name, but you're not both in high school, right? Sam Lawrence, you are in high school, correct?
I'm in high school.
Oh wait, you're in high school.
Sam's in college.
Sam Cao is a junior in high school. I believe he just finished up his junior year.
Yeah.
I just finished up my freshman year in college.
Okay, so you're an adult at least, like you could vote for yourself.
Yes.
Oh, I can vote too. In Ohio, like the law has it so that if you turn 18 by general election, you can run. So I'm already on the ballot and I can already vote. So I voted in the previous primary, which was in May.
Okay,
That's awesome.
So Sam L, where is your district? I know that. Are you both around the same look? Like
we are literally right next to each other.
No,
like,
really?
It is-
47 and 56.
It's so insane how this works. Well, first of all, with Ohio's Republican
Gerrymandering in Ohio.
Yeah, I had two baby deer in my yard the other day, and I said I should name them Jerry and Mander. But anyways, my district is similar to Sam's. We're both in Southwest Ohio. I'm a county over in Butler County. I've got a third of that, so I'm in Oxford and Hamilton, where Miami University is. And it's insane how a 17-year-old, and I turned 19 2 weeks ago. So when I launched, an 18-year-old, both named Sam, were running campaigns for state house in Southwest Ohio. I mean, it's nuts.
Under the Democratic Party.
How are they treating you? I see one of you, I think it's you, Sam Cao, that there's somebody in that primary. There's a woman in your primary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So how is the party treating you?
So the party, of course, since we're in a primary, we're not supposed to like have any like endorsements from anyone in the party establishment. And so right now they're just waiting it out for one of us to climb out of our primaries. But my opponent and I, we're actually on very good basis. We actually helped each other like a lot at the very beginning, and we traded tips. And so we're trying to run like a clean and healthy primary and show to the rest of Ohio that, the Democratic primary here, like, we're running a good example. And over there in the other primary where it's not as like sunny.
Okay. Well, that's the best way to do it. You show people you want to be the representative, be the representative.
Absolutely.
What inspired you guys? Obviously it goes without saying that the political climate in our country has changed dramatically in the past 6 years. I mean, it was always heading for sort of like a hot button type situation, but what was your inspiration? Was there a particular candidate? Was it just a particular policy or movement that really got you guys thinking, you know what? Who cares if we're young? Okay,
but before that, Sam Lawrence, where do you go to school?
So I just finished up my freshman year at Miami University.
Okay, so you are at Miami. Okay.
My mom teaches there.
And your mom teaches there.
Everyone, in this Ohio-like state, everyone knows.
We're a tight-knit community down here in Southwest Ohio. And
I
like Sam was saying, before I answer why I was kind of intrigued to run, they're running that amicable primary just like a lot of people are running amicable primaries in Ohio on the Democratic side. Because when you look on the Republican side, especially in that Senate primary between J.D. Vance and Josh Mandel, they're mudslinging. They're really hitting hard on each other. Yeah. We recognize there's a bigger fight here. We can't spend our resources on primaries because the Republicans have gerrymandered our state so bad. And that's also kind of leads me into why we both decided to run. I can speak for myself. I worked on, I helped with Pete Buttigieg's campaign, and I heard you guys talking about the family that the Yang Gang was. I gotta say, Team Pete's been sticking through with me here ever since his campaign.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, you guys know how young he was. He was 38, first openly gay person to win a contest in the presidential election. He was such an inspiration to me. And that kind of showed, I think it's time for a younger generation to step up, especially when my opponent has 2 scandals in 2 terms.
Yeah. Good point. No, we definitely think the young people need to step up. And most importantly, because I don't know how much longer I want to be doing this. Like, I feel like, and that's what amazes me about some of these older people in Congress. Like, aren't there better, more fun things for you to be doing? Pass the friggin' baton, Nancy. Pass the baton.
We have that going on right now.
I can't with these people.
You guys are probably familiar with a really amazing young candidate. Maxwell Frost is running for Congress in Orlando. And unfortunately, and again, he's not even,
you had to bring that up.
Well, not even on policy necessarily is Alan Grayson, bad regarding, most domestic policy. Foreign policy is another story.
He's a dinosaur.
But yeah.
Move on.
And,
I am so tired of these old people. And I'm sorry, yes, particularly men. I really am.
And he unfortunately is running, trying to get into a race literally at the last minute against a young gentleman like yourself, who by congressional standards, being 25, is the equivalent of running for, a state house at 17.
Well, yeah, it's the youngest you could possibly be, right? And he's been doing well. They're doing well with fundraising. He has good support.
Very well with fundraising.
Very well. Great support. Good progressive in the race. He's got great volunteers. So someone who then says that they're progressive decides to jump in that race. See, I can't with that man.
And if he really wanted to, if he really cared, he would run against one of the corporate Democrats that is in the same area that he's already run against before.
He's a coward.
Instead, it's like this. Yeah, let me see if I can kind of nudge in on the young guys. So
I could vomit.
I would assume that you guys are getting a lot of that pushback of, you're too young to be doing this.
Oh my, yeah.
Have you been told that you should run for your homeowners association board?
I'll let Sam handle this one. Go for it.
Yeah. So just at our March for Our Lives, rally like 4 days ago in Cincinnati, we met a bunch of former candidates that were talking to us, and they're like, we've been paying attention to the comments you guys have been getting on Twitter, and they're pretty ageist, and I think that it's time to give a new diverse pool of candidates a chance, because how can we say that they're not qualified if we haven't even seen them out there? And right now with the whole situation, it's worth a shot. And so I've had people come up to me and say, also on Twitter, saying, you're too young to run for Congress. You're not educated enough. And I'm like, I'm not running for Congress though. I'm running for state rep. So there's a lot of irony.
Question we get.
There is so much irony with that. And but
the number one question we both get is, how are you on the ballot for Congress? And then we say, we're not running for Congress, we're running for the state house. And then they say, what's a state house? And so we have to get into that whole discussion.
Double points if they say we're not educated enough to run for Congress.
That's good. Yeah. They say go to school first, yet we're both in school.
Yeah. I would never. Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons we wanted to have you guys on the podcast, not just because you're doing an amazing job of building this grassroots support,
we like young people,
but the non-corporate progressive movement really has a big problem when it comes to following the traditional machinations of the Democratic Party, which is a top-down approach. We need a bottom-up approach. That's why the GOP is so successful.
Yeah.
You could never... I mean, look, Trump was a very unique presidential candidate, but you could never elect somebody like George W. Bush as president in the Democratic Party, because he could never carry a party. He's not a dynamic personality like a Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, or Bill Clinton. You need to have somebody who is basically, the tide is lifting you up to the top. And so if we were to build an infrastructure of people who supported universal health care, living wage, ending the wars, the fact that the president could enact a climate emergency and build a clean energy grid, we need this type of momentum at the level that you guys are running at. And then
eventually somebody from that level will organically be in the position to take over where the movement needs to be taken over. That's what they don't understand. They're too busy trying to fight to keep the status quo.
And even though the southwest region of Ohio and the Cincinnati area tends to be very Republican, if you start building that base right now, that will turn at some point into a flipped seat if it's not going to happen in the next few years, but in the foreseeable future. That is going to happen because you're building that infrastructure.
Yep.
We already know, as you guys I'm sure are well aware, I mean, people see how low voter turnout is in congressional primaries. I can't even imagine how low it must be in state house primaries.
Especially since the Republicans moved our primary to now August 2nd. And they're not telling anybody because the less people vote, the better they do.
And people, I always talk with people and they're like, yeah, I vote down ballot. And I'm like, oh, that's good on you. And they're like, yeah, I vote for Congress. And I'm like, well, you can get, more down the ballot than that. You can go for county commissioner. You can go for mayor. And we have to start like a strategy from like bottom up. And that's exactly what the Ohio GOP has done, like historically, to have such a strong solidified standing here. And we've seen that with Governor Voinovich's, sweep into office along with other statewide offices. And in fact, I in my personal opinion, I think that's the reason why today, state auditor, attorney general, and, governor, all those statewide offices and also secretary of state, it's all Republican held seats.
And here's what I'll tell you is that the Republicans in Ohio have been doing this bottom-up approach, which I've been campaigning for the Democrats to do for so long, because I love the top of the ticket candidates, but you can't be friends with them. You can't have them in your living room. When you can get people excited about smaller candidates that get people to turn out and vote blue, the numbers will come for the statewide candidates, and that's what we need to start doing.
And it's not just like a voting blue because, to support the Democrats, but also voting blue because this is how you can save our state. We've just had House Bill 99 passed, which, school districts can choose if they want to arm their teachers. And recently we made national headlines for the genital inspections for,
we're going to have to talk about that if you're going to bring that up. Because I don't understand how that protects children to be looking at their genitalia.
How does that violate your constitutional rights?
Oh, for God's sake. That's not going to be upheld, by the way. Like
the Party of Freedom has continued trying to ban our books, to force mandatory inspections on children's genitalia. It's insane. It's insanity to arm teachers with 24 hours of training, only 2 with a gun. It's common sense. It really is common sense.
You can't trust teachers with the curriculum. How can you trust them with guns? It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, again, there are many instances where people, it's overly hyperbolic regarding how bad the Democrats, are, let's say, in terms of the way that they operate, let's say in California or New York, and then how the Republicans operate in their dominated states. The GOP in Ohio is really bad.
It is not comparable.
The FBI investigated our state house and deemed it one of the most corrupt right now in the nation.
And you know what? The FBI ranked Ohio state government as the most corrupt out of any of the 50 states. And
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but GOP majority. My opponent, again, like I said, my opponents had scandals. But the scary part about it is they're so blatant in their corruption, and they're so blatant in these bills, and people pretend like these evils are somehow comparable. They're not. It's not even close to the same level. There's one party in Ohio that is for common sense and one that is for extremism. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing though about when you do get low voter turnout, even though that's not good, it really makes it really possible for non-corporate people to be able to win local and smaller and state offices without expending a fortune of money. And so you need less voters to come out for you. In theory, I mean, it's a numbers game. You know this. It's a numbers game. It's how many voters can you get out and vote for you? And when you have low turnout, you need to get less voters as well.
Absolutely.
Do you guys know Nick Rabondo by any chance? Does that name sound familiar?
He's up near like Sandusky.
Well, doesn't everybody in Ohio know everybody?
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm just kidding.
He's a great candidate that ran for Congress in a very red district. He was the Democrat, but he actually is a progressive.
But now he is he a city council member? But he's
he did something local.
Yes, but he's an elected official.
Great.
And the more that local base gets built up is really what is going to make the difference. Now, I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Jen's congressional run against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but what we did in our race was focus on community service, basically transforming politics into service. So reaching out to the local small businesses, being in the community is so immensely important. Have you guys more or less figured out your strategy? Is it about, providing service to the community? What has been the appeal? What is that strategy to really galvanize a lot of local support?
Yeah, so I can speak for my district. So our representative, we have had a representative who's been an absentee representative for the past 8 years. And so he doesn't even show up to go vote. And,
He doesn't even vote. Yeah.
In the words of, what he said in an article in 2016, my vote doesn't matter. We already have a Republican supermajority. So why should I show up?
Why should you even be there?
Exactly.
When you're elected by, by popular demand based on people in your district that think their votes like mattered, and you say that's a really bad example. And not to mention, you're from the party of fiscal responsibility while you're eating away our district taxpayers' salary benefits. And so he doesn't even show up to vote. And you see like the roll call sheet for like all these like controversial bills proposed in the Ohio State House just recently. You don't see Zeltwanger because you may think, oh wow, he didn't want to vote for the yes on this bill. No, he just plain and simple, he didn't even show up.
To give you a little bit of background on Paul Zeltwanger, the current representative in Sam's district, he's one of the 4 Republicans who tried to impeach DeWine over his COVID restrictions.
Right,
and that's about the most notable thing he's done. So I mean, we're in contact with a lot of representatives that are currently serving because they're egging us on. They love what we're doing. They'll sometimes send us pictures of this big board where they all vote. Zeltwanger's name is never there.
Never there. Yeah.
How come he's not terming out? Hasn't he been there a while? Like you guys have term limits.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, okay, I'll get to that. So in the 90s, our state had just rampant government corruption, and still, of course, it's like multiplied. But back then, the voters were very annoyed about it, and so they placed an issue on the ballot initiative to put term limits on state legislators. And it really shaped the makeup of the entire state legislature, because now you had like 1/3 of incoming, or 1/3 of state legislators that were incoming. Of course, they were all new to the game, and the procedures were different. And now term limits, it's 4 terms, and each term is 2 years. And so he's been term limited, and that's the only reason why he's leaving office. Otherwise, I believe that he would have just kept putting his name on the ballot.
For sure.
He did not do any active campaigning. And so like in the previous 4 election cycles that he's ran in, all the candidates that ran in my spot as the Democrat, there weren't any primaries back then, so they were the nominees. This is like the first time our district is having a Democratic primary. So back then, all those candidates, they poured thousands and thousands of dollars. And if I recall correctly, just in 2020, in the last election cycle, there was a 21-year-old senior from UMich that ran in my seat, my spot for Paul Zeltwanger's seat. And Paul Zeltwanger spent around $1,000, and then he spent $50K, and still he lost by a significant margin.
And to kind of circle back to what's our strategy with community building. Obviously, we've talked about how his representative Zeltwanger, he's term limited, but even when he wasn't campaigning. He wasn't anywhere. Right. I can say that my opponent, who's not term limited, I'm running against an incumbent. Her name is Sarah Carruthers. She will throw on a campaign T-shirt and hop in a parade and wave, but that's about it. She'll pay other people to campaign for her. But my strategy is to outwork her. I mean, Sam and I we were both out on the doors today. It was 95 degrees here in Southwest Ohio, and we're putting in the work.
Yeah. And we're taking the Proxmire strat and making it really grassroots. And I think that there's just a lot of inspiration with just Senator William Proxmire. Sherrod Brown, our senator from Ohio, has his desk in the Senate. And so how William Proxmire approached running in a red state as a Democrat was that he had a quota of how many hands he would shake every single day, and he would not go to sleep if he didn't reach that quota. And so he shook so many hands, and through that's how he won, not just the Senate race, but he was the first candidate of any party in red Wisconsin to win every county. He shook everyone's hand and got, involved. And that's my goal. I'm going to make it, my goal to just walk all over the district and talk to as many voters as possible, and just show that I've been everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing you can do. Most of the people,
Yeah.
when you knock on their door, they've never had somebody knock on their door before. They're going to be like, just so like nobody's ever asked them. And we would ask people like, what can we do for you? How can we help you? What can your representative do for you? What's, you know, and they were like dumbfounded by this. Nobody has ever done anything, but at best never offered to help.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think our three campaigns are very similar, Jen, in the fact that, I mean, first of all, for me, listening is so much more important than talking. What can I do for you? Not, can I have your vote? Because
Right.
they'll immediately slam the door in your face, as well as the fact that our districts are both fairly rural. There are a lot of areas where we'll knock on doors, and it's not just Democrats that haven't been there. They haven't seen a politician come knock on their door. It's insane. So we need to reach out to every single corner of our district and kind of strategically pick out those votes.
Are you guys cross-pollinating? I'm sorry, are you cross-pollinating with each other so that like you are like not a slate, but like where you can like collaborate resources?
Yeah, Sam Squared or Sam's Club. We're still trying to decide a name.
Sam's Club. Yeah,
And
that works.
I will tell you guys something. Way back when I first got into this race, I started an offhand Twitter group chat with like 5 candidates from Southwest Ohio. Sam was one of the ones in there originally. That group chat has grown to be over 70 candidates, incumbents and non-incumbents, congressional, all of our statewide candidates, Tim Ryan, Nan Whaley, and we really are forming a community. I've never seen this done before with a statewide slate. We are planning to get together. Our regional candidates are collaborating, and we're really showing that the Democrats have a united front here, because if we don't, we're going to lose, and we can't afford that.
And we call ourselves the #FlipOhioBlue Coalition on Twitter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If there's a state that needs to unrig its gerrymandering and really have representation for the people.
We've spent some time in Ohio. We were up there canvassing for Nina this last time, and I'm really a fan of Cleveland. I got to tell you, that city is definitely pleases me.
Honestly, and listen, I love our country, and I think there's unique parts of all of the first 4 corner states that you go to: Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. But honestly, Ohio is the United States of America.
It's the most. It really is the most representative state of everything in this country. It is.
When you think about how Southwest Ohio is, how Northwest Ohio is, Columbus, Cleveland, the Southeast portion, which is Appalachia. I mean, it's got everything. Like it really does. And what you guys are doing is, the word admirable is not the right word.
No, we love it.
It's really, really important. And building this coalition, you guys, I am sure, are familiar with Gen Z for Change. You know, these things are necessary because there is sort of like this Republican mindset of, I can't rely on other people to do this. I got to do this myself. So getting in the game, especially in high school, is unbelievable. I assume you guys have, and normally it's always us reaching out to the younger guys that are in college, but have you found that getting volunteers at the college and high school level has been
that was
formidable?
basically my entire volunteer staff.
Yeah.
It's like a hit or miss for me. Some high school students, they're very interested in the campaign, but of course this primary is taking place over the summer, and so a lot of people are off to vacation.
Yeah.
And Sam can speak for.
Well, one of the No, go ahead,
I was just going to say, on my side, kind of a similar situation in that all of my college friends who don't live here in Oxford, where I am, they have moved home for the summer. However, when they come back in a month, we're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. We're gonna be all over this.
That's awesome.
If you guys have any, we are doing campaign strategy now. It's part of what we do. So if you guys,
what we do,
yes, well, we're special. We're
special.
We're kind of a big deal. And so if you guys have any questions, would like to reach us, please shoot us an email.
Yeah.
We are more than happy to help and provide strategy. There is a way to get more volunteers, particularly when it comes to the high school and college students, getting course credit, having an internship.
Yeah.
There is a variety of different ways to get them involved. So if you have any questions or anything like that we could do to help.
Have them out there serving their communities.
Yep,
give them service hours and teach them that that's what this is supposed to look like.
And
that's what we're really trying to do.
And the next thing you know, you're picking off voters left and right because they see that what you're doing. Oh, and branding. branding really
He
does
makes
make
us
a
wear the
difference.
opposite colors every single show. This is what I'm here. I could care less. I'm just wearing what I'm wearing, and he's like, really? And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, well,
Good on him. The man knows how to do color coordination. Okay.
I
never
designed
worked
the
out.
Here Comes the Sun shirts.
that
though.
was definitely Jen. And yeah, the marketing is a big thing. If you guys don't currently have any specific like universal branding or
If you
marketing
guys
type
need help,
thing,
feel free to reach out.
yeah,
That's
that's
what
what we're
he's saying.
doing. And
Yeah.
everyone needs a helping hand, and you certainly don't need it from the consultant class.
No.
So if
No.
you want to know how to do it and do it on a smart budget and be as effective as you can, know how to get the most out of your dollar when you're running for office is also
Yeah.
so
Absolutely, yeah. Everything for at the very beginning, it was just like me at the very beginning and just a few of my friends. For instance, like I designed my logo, I edited my launch video, I launched my Twitter, and I still managed that. And I probably should find someone to do that for me. But yeah, everything's grassroots, and definitely like I'm not interested in any political consultants.
Yeah, don't stay away from them. And well, the truth is, they're not interested in you unless you're having big numbers. Once you're bringing in money, then they'll all come out of the woodwork
No, they just-
sniffing
they-
for a paycheck.
They just don't care about you, period.
Yeah,
And-
they
and
really
that's
don't.
What people really
They really
need to
don't. They don't
understand.
care whether you're campaign. They're not on your mission. They just want a paycheck.
That's
Yeah.
another benefit that's come from having this community of candidates. That's not just on Twitter. That's where it started
Yeah.
for sure. But now we're able to connect with so many candidates and incumbents across the state. We can compare notes, compare what we're doing, give each other strategies. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, samcalohio.com and sam4ohio.com. District 47, District 56, Southwest Ohio. Guys, it really has not only been a pleasure, but it really has been an experience because what you guys doing is inspiring.
Yeah.
And we hope that there are more people that will see this and recognize that this is how it has to be done.
Yeah. And whether you win or lose, keep doing what you're doing.
Oh,
Keep
we're in this for the long haul. Yeah, Sam and I,
Yeah.
we discussed this. Our souls are in Ohio.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so good when you do a service type of campaign is win or lose, your progress, your momentum, your coalition, your organization, your volunteers, you still have a reason to still keep going.
Look, I just wanted to come here and say that I saw these two wonderful young men on our podcast.
You love it when the young people
No, they do
come
a
on.
really great job, and I've
I know.
inspired. No, we've inspired a lot of young people, Jen. We've done a good job, and these young kids, they're doing a really good job.
I
Sam
know.
and Sam, I certainly give you my full support. I hope you do win your primary, and I hope you get elected into office. We need more of the young kids, the kids, you know.
Yeah, and
Oh,
aren't
thank
you
you.
ready to
Thank
just
you,
be
Senator.
done and pass the
Well-
torch? Aren't you ready? I mean, wouldn't you rather just sort of retire?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not only old enough to be their grandfather, I'm old enough to be their great-grandfather.
I know you
Please don't run for president again.
I
We
don't
need young
know
people.
for sure what I'm going to do, but I promise you I'm thinking really hard about not doing it again because it's a lot of work.
And you're old.
But look, I know I'm old, but I'm not.
I love you. But
I love you guys too, and I wish you lots of luck. I think you're going to do a wonderful job now and for many years to come, long before I'm gone. You know, that's what I'm looking for.
well, yeah.
It's always funny when he puts on the Bernie mask when he's wearing the t-shirt. It's such this juxtaposition, like with Bernie, because I've never seen Bernie like in a t-shirt.
Hey,
Like,
listen,
certainly
if
not
she
my
runs for
t-shirt.
Congress
Get
again,
that,
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
yeah, if she runs for Congress again and I do a video as Bernie saying Bernie endorses Jen Perlman for Congress, I'm going to need to get Bernie to actually come out of his shell and say, no, I did not endorse Jen Perlman for Congress.
I'll retweet that video. You have my word.
Same here.
Well, thank you guys so much for having us on.
Thank
you
you,
for what
guys.
you're doing. Guys, Sam Cao, Sam Lawrence, please
Support.
chip in $27 if you could. Phone bank, text bank, and if you happen to be in Louisville, if you happen to be in Cincinnati, if you happen to be in Indianapolis and you can make the trip
Help.
to get out there to help.
Help.
These guys can use all the groundwork.
Sign up
That's
for
the
a
difference.
shift.
Yeah, that's what we're here
We
for.
certainly
Thank
can.
you for doing that.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Take care.
Have a great
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Well, Jen, what do you normally say?
I always say, I'm like, well, they were lovely.
Very, very solid candidates.
And
as
that
far as
and
we're
Sam
concerned.
Lawrence, and he's still back there in the back
Yeah.
room, but I can see I was meaning to tell him he has sort of like a young Leonardo DiCaprio thing going on. And I remember young Leo from when he was on the Growing Pains age. Like, and this,
Leo was on Growing Pains.
oh yeah, Leo started on Growing Pains. He was sort of
well,
like
he certainly turned out better than Kirk Cameron, that's for sure.
he was like the like not an adopted kid, but like a, you know, I forget what it was, but yeah, Leo started on Growing Pains, and I remember, but yeah, Sam sort of had that.
Listen,
kind
we're
of
not
vibe.
going to, you know, and again, we're not going to agree on his support of Mr. Buttigieg.
I'm not
But
going to go there. Whatever
but
inspires you,
to
inspires you.
his, but listen, the one thing you could say about Pete's campaign, he did have a lot of young supporters. He did. And that's one of the reasons why he was as successful as he was.
Now, if Sam was sitting there saying, let them drink water about the baby bottles, then I would say baby formula.
But everyone has their reasons for getting involved. And just the experience of being involved politically really makes a huge difference for a lot of people.
I'd love to talk to Dennis.
Would love to talk to Dennis Kucinich.
I would love to. Loved him. My mom voted for him. At the time that he was running, I wasn't living in Florida.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't have. My mom was like, I lived in Texas when W was governor. So that was never going any other direction but bad.
It is time to bid adieu. Please tell people where you're going to be for the next 6 weeks.
Oh, yes. Guys, this is my last show in the studio for 6 weeks. So I'm going to be in Asheville. I'll be telecommuting. What do we call it? Video.
Jen is going to a cabin in the woods to write a book.
Well, I'm trying the same book I've been working on for like 2 years.
But this is different now.
Well, I'm hoping so because I'm hoping somebody helps me.
I will, but you're really going to have an opportunity to really have
I'm not going to be in the no, I'm not. Last year I was on a cannabis farm. That was really nice and secluded.
True.
This I'm in West Asheville, so I'll be there for 6 weeks. And I'll be coming to you from there.
So
what do we have coming up?
We are going to speak with Garland.
I saw that. Dixon. Garland Nixon's coming on.
That should be a fun chat, and that's going to be on Juneteenth. So somebody from not just from the Black community, but a really important voice who doesn't pull any punches, and we need more of that. Also, happy 40th birthday to India Walton.
Ooh.
We could shoot her a text.
I'm going to, because I also want to know if she got the first 5 pages of my book.
And a lot of you saw... Listen, Zach Graumann is definitely more on the moderate side of politics, but Zach Graumann basically told us this evening that he is going to support Ron DeSantis, and so is Elon Musk, who came out today saying that that's who he's going to support. And so what that should tell you is...
He didn't really say he was supporting DeSantis.
No, he kind of did. I'm not going to say he definitively did, but I think that's where he said that he thinks that the best option right now would be him. Maybe that's true. And against... somebody like Biden, that's who he would feel that he would want to support. And the same is true for somebody like Elon Musk, who, despite not liking the guy, he has an immense amount of support on social media and really can move the needle a la like a Joe Rogan.
Elon Musk is a douchebag.
But one thing that we have to talk about before we go tonight.
What is this? Are you having a
For those of you who still think that the People's Party is a real thing, and that's going anywhere.
I just hate when we mention it because I don't like giving him screen time.
Jimmy Dore's running for president of the United States. I had a light up for that one.
But it's I'm having trouble dragging. I'll hold it for you.
Hey Jimmy,
it's having trouble dragging. It's so ridiculous.
That's for you, Jimmy.
Oh my God. Well, it just really goes to show you that party is just a farce. That's not a real thing.
Who is taking this seriously?
They're not. They're just trying to be spoilers. That's the whole point.
No, and again, at least somebody like Jesse Ventura, you can see where people would get excited about him and donate to him. And say,
he was a governor.
Yeah.
Like he actually has held the executive position over
the most common
government.
The most common position that a president holds.
Is governor.
Overwhelmingly. This is why a lot of people think DeSantis is going to be the next president. Governor, by an overwhelming margin, is the elected position of the person who becomes president of the United States. Senator, yeah, it's happened. Vice president, obviously. But
governors are definitely in a position. I don't hate him as much as people think that we should. No, I just don't.
But again, the only reason why Jimmy would do this and is being propped up by Nick Brana to do this is to make money.
Oh my God, it's such a grift.
Could you imagine Jimmy running for president and just going around and doing his thing and people come out and they give him the money?
Although what scares me is we said that about Trump and then look.
Totally different circumstance.
I know.
Totally different circumstance. Jimmy Dore doesn't. Donald Trump was known the world over when he ran for president. Some people know who Jimmy Dore is, but nothing at that level.
It's a small echo chamber.
And not the ability to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. But let's say Jimmy does run for president and raises, I don't know, $15, $20 million. That would be really impressive, but that's just a way to make money. That's what it is.
Enough people will jump
And
on
enough
that.
to write a book. And they'll make money off writing a book.
But the whole point is, it's a grift. It's
Anybody
a grift.
who would be taking this seriously, and I mean anybody who would be taking Jimmy Dore running for president seriously, yeah, maybe that is why Jimmy would run for president again. Maybe he needs a new house. I don't know. Brandon, I don't know what Jimmy is, but I know he's somebody who only thinks about the bottom line. That's for sure. And just to remind people, because I love bringing this story up anytime Jimmy does some crap
I hate even mentioning him. I truly do, because I feel like, why do we even have to acknowledge it? It's so stupid.
This was a big story that came out today that the People's Party are sending out fundraising emails saying, hey, we got to get Jimmy Dore to run for president. Well, let me remind you all that Jimmy Dore came down here at the end of 2019 for a comedy show in Miami.
I think people have heard this story now.
It's been a while since I've told it.
All right,
we got
Peter
some new
loves this
people
story.
here. And there was a lot of people there. Jimmy's got supporters. He probably had a good 400 people, you'd say, in the room.
And it was like not in our district, but right next to our district.
Right next
like
to
a
it.
lot of
10
local
minutes
people.
outside,
It was all
absolutely.
local people.
The show lasted for 2 hours, and an hour of it was spent bashing Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Which is good. I mean, it's righteous, you know. I mean, I have no problem with that righteous anger.
But never once did he mention, and he knew that Jen Perlman was in the audience, not that far from him, running against Debbie. Did not feel the need to mention that they're in Debbie's territory and that somebody's actually running for Congress. But he did feel the need to announce that Tim Canova was there and to get up and take a bow to the crowd.
It was hilarious. It was the most, these are very self-important people. That's what I think. It's just, that was when I knew that the whole thing with Jimmy and that whole thing, that they don't really stand for anything. They don't really mean anything. They just want clicks. He's just angry and belligerent. They don't have desire to really do change. They're just angry and grifting. And I knew that because you come into our town and sit there and talk crap about the person who's the representative here, because she does suck. I mean, she sucks. And then don't acknowledge that there's somebody running against her that's on policy with you, on par with everything you believe, and you don't even bring that up. We could have probably scooped up a dozen of volunteers that night. Easy.
Just by Jimmy saying, Jen Perlman running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Give her some love.
And then not only didn't he do that, but then he never mentioned us the entire time we were running. He ghosted us. And not only did he ghost us, but then that sort of downplayed to all his little like content creator minions, and they ghosted us.
Yeah.
And that's, that's not somebody who's on the team of progress.
No.
And I knew that then.
You had to know, because again, there's this thing where everyone's thinking, well, Jimmy had it out with the Young Turks, and that must mean that Jimmy's the good guy. You know, in many instances, fellas, there are no good guys.
Oh, I can tell you that very, very clearly. There's a lot of instances where there's no good guys.
So trying to always find, Trump's the good guy because he's fighting against the establishment. How about none of them are good?
They're all bad.
Like,
it's a full bowl of shit, people.
Bernie is great, but Bernie is not willing to go where he needs to go.
No, he's not.
And that's the difference. And you want to call Bernie all kinds of names because
Jesse Ventura would, though.
Jesse Ventura would go.
Like Jesse Ventura on a debate stage with Joe Biden would have absolutely called him out on everything. No doubt in my mind, he would have called him out. Whereas Bernie wouldn't do it. And Joe flat out lied.
Radical leftist agenda. No one is debating that Jimmy Dore is not better than the Democratic establishment.
But wait. That's apples and oranges. Better than in what way? The Democratic establishment is sitting in an electoral political position that's stifling all of us. Jimmy is sitting there screaming to not even be involved with them whatsoever, even though there is no other real venue there. They are not getting a presidential candidate on the ballot in 24. They haven't had ballot access in any state. They've been around for 5 years. How long has it been? We had a show, go back and look at it, where we spoke with somebody who was one of the original volunteers on their camp, on the People's Party movement. And what they did was nothing. They've had plenty of time to have candidates.
And let's remember something too. And this is something we could definitely say about Jimmy. He's been very adamant about the fact that he will not platform anybody within the Democratic or Republican Party. Okay, fine. There are countless seats that are nonpartisan, including a very important seat in Los Angeles that just went to an amazing non-corporate activist leader in Ken Mejia, somebody who ran in the Green Party twice, got the nomination last election cycle against Jimmy Gomez, was very competitive going to the general, and now he's going to be the comptroller of Los Angeles. Why didn't Jimmy ever mention this guy? You want to bring change that's outside the two-party system? This is how you do it. I mean, to me, that to me is everything. City council, county commission,
They really are
board,
important.
mayor. These, in many ways, like these two young gentlemen, Sam Cao and Sam Lawrence, who came on tonight.
How cute were they?
Like,
I
awesome kids.
love those boys. I
No,
like
like-
all these kids that are so into. I love those guys locally. We have young people locally that amaze me.
And again, Maoist, now you're getting into semantics. We understand what you're saying.
I
but
agree.
The system is still corrupt to the core. And if you want to change it, you must elect non-corporate representatives. You must do outside work like mutual aid. You must be willing, as our good friend Jordan Chariton of Status Quo mentioned, you have to be doing economic boycotts. That's how you really get
I
change.
don't have a problem with conservative people. I don't at all have a problem with conservative people. We've had this discussion many times on this show. We'll have people on. And then we once had somebody say, well, how do you expect to pull them to the left? I don't expect to pull them to the left. I expect to work with them where they are.
Yeah.
That's how things are going to get done, because the reality is we agree with them on most things. Most people in this country agree on the big issues. They do, far and wide, not even close. On economic populism, that is something where, yeah, I'm going to work with people that are Trumpers. If they are supporting labor and they're fighting for unionization and they're out marching with like your John Deere workers or your coal miners, then yeah, I don't care if they're Trump supporters. We're all fighting for labor. This is the problem. And I think it's a bigger problem on the left. So yes, I agree. And I wouldn't say I agree with the whole idea that right-wing populism. It's just a matter of if somebody is socially conservative versus socially liberal, that is really not my concern right now. We're in a dire situation, and all of the working people need to unite against the top people.
Yeah.
That's what a revolution is. That's what needs to happen. And instead, they have us punching left and right and kicking down.
And listen, if you
We're very distracted.
And listen, I've listened to Jimmy for years, and he still does really great bits. You know, his show is entertaining. He does have righteous anger. I have no doubt that most of it is real, but Jimmy's a businessman.
I don't dislike him because of his political or social beliefs.
Jimmy-
I dislike him because I think he's a grifter.
Jimmy does what he does because he's going to go wherever the most money is to be made.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how people at this point can't see that. And Sam Cedar was right to bring it up. Well, we knew this was coming, that Jimmy was going to try something like this. How could you not see it happening? How could you not see that if Jimmy knows that he can make a few $1 million running for president, why would he not do it?
Which to me makes him be exactly the same as Trump, because basically
Totally the same.
you're a showman and you're doing griftership. I just don't have respect for that. I don't think you're part of the solution. I think you're causing more division than you're worth, and you're profiting on it. So to me, it isn't that he is conservative or not conservative. None of that. I can get along with all sorts of people. I have friends that are pro-life. I can get along with all sorts of people with all different viewpoints. But when you're in it for the reasons that are self-serving and narcissistic, you're not really on my team in terms of the fight that I'm fighting for just the people that are the least of these. That's what I'm about. So if you're not fighting for the least of these and you don't feel a responsibility for collective, and all you're doing is being angry and yelling and just causing more division, we're not on the same page. We're not on the same team. And it doesn't matter whether or not what his personal views are. Like, it's nothing to do with his political views.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And another thing that we noticed, which I thought was very telling, everyone knows right now where the trajectory of the political winds are moving. After what happened with Ms. Flores winning her race in South Texas the other day, this has been a Democratic stronghold for generation after generation after generation. This is a sign of what's coming in the midterms. It's also a sign of where the Democrats get things wrong regarding their messaging in terms of how they deal with migration and immigrants. if you don't know how to handle this particular talking point, or you are just going to give in to the notion of we can have open borders when the overwhelming majority of this country does not want that.
Are you telling? Wait. A candidate was promoting open borders in a Texas primary.
But well, that's what they also were trying to do with Cisneros, because Cisneros is extremely lax when it comes to immigration, and that's why Cuellar really won his race. That probably as much as anything. Now, Pelosi and all of them coming down to help absolutely made the difference in terms of the vote margin.
The whole thing disgusts me.
But that, without question.
Although maybe she'll come on our show now.
When you have a candidate that, frankly, we agree with, like an Amy Vilela, only gets 16% of the vote to 84% of the incumbent Dina Titus. You know, there's also something to be said for the strategy that's also important. And as we discussed, this particular year has been a really unique year running for office. But every election cycle, you're usually able to get one or two
through.
Yeah, that's all. You really can't count on much. We've gotten one. You've got Summer Lee in Pittsburgh. And I do think that John Fetterman is going to win the Senate race in Pennsylvania. I also do think that Yulene, how do I say this name? Yulene New, she has a really good chance to win that congressional seat in New York 10.
Yeah.
So
TM, Yang is 30 years older than Sam. Okay, give Yang a break, man. All right, don't pick on older people. He's not going to look like, you know, the young Jet Li thing going on there, whatever you're thinking. I mean, I appreciate that.
And we would have Rashida Tlaib on our show. And frankly, she probably should. She should come on our show, because now she's got Mr. DC Swamp Dweller himself, Bakari Sellers, getting paid $1 million as part of a corporate PAC to try to knock her out of office, which is part of the APAC, you know, the whatever they call that group. I'm not so sure that right now, I don't think Stacey Abrams is going to win her race. But listen, I'd rather be proven wrong. I think that
we obviously prefer Stacey Abrams. Yeah. Like that would be our preference there.
And I definitely hope that Senator Warnock keeps his seat against Herschel Walker.
Oh, that guy is like, he's just
talk about terrible.
And he comes off extremely stupid.
He is. Because he's well, listen, when you've taken as many hits to the head as a professional football player
I wonder about that. I wonder about that, but you know, he comes off extremely stupid.
Yeah. But again, I would say bringing the whole conversation full circle regarding Jimmy is.
We need to have an immigration topic panel. We haven't really done that.
Yeah.
I don't. My whole thing is that
Jimmy does not look to help anybody
but himself.
Like I really wish people would see that.
Who's he working for? Like, in a sense that, what are his policies? What is he about now? What is he about? To me, I don't get a sense like, okay, for example, Yang's about UBI, Bernie's about Medicare for all. Like, people are about something, right? Like, what's he about? What's he trying to do other than crap on anybody who's doing it differently than him? Like, I just don't get what he's about. What is he selling?
As I said, I really think at this point, it's all about his brand.
Jen's never running for a statewide office. That's not happening.
Maybe I will. You never know.
Well, that's fine. You might have it in you to drive all around the state. I don't. State's too big. If I lived in Rhode Island, if I lived in Delaware, you know, I'd consider running a statewide race. Florida, not happening.
So again, anyone who would even take Jimmy's attempt to run for president in the People's Party, and I'll say one more thing. How is Jimmy going to even run for president in the People's Party when they have barely any ballot access?
They have no. Well, that's what I'm saying. They have not done anything to build up the infrastructure to put in place to even have local candidates. They don't even have local or statewide. Like, they don't have the infrastructure. How are you going to get somebody on the ballot through a party that doesn't have ballot access? I don't understand how they're going to do that. They really think they're going to be able to achieve that like in another year when they've had however many years and haven't done it? I just think that it's silly, and anybody who gives them money is insane.
Better spent in other places.
And these are the people that we're telling people not to donate to Nina's campaign.
Oh yeah, well, not that we don't have our own criticisms of how Nina's
that's neither here nor there.
race,
there is no doubt as to why she's in
but
it.
Nina is definitely in it for the right
Oh,
reason.
for sure.
So,
Yeah, Greens do. Yeah, well, that's great. He could support that, but that isn't an option. That's the thing. It's good to support that. I support that. I can't stand the duopoly. I can't stand the Democratic Party. I don't give them a dime. I will never give them a dime. That's why I'm not in the clubs. That's why I'm not part of any of their stuff.
that's why it'll be amazing if you do run again and win, you even make it past one term, because they expect you to raise money for the party. Like, they expect you to do that.
Yeah, good luck to them with that. I will not give them a dime. I don't support them. Our state party takes money from Big Sugar, it takes money from Walmart. I am not going to get no. So I don't support them.
And when
I don't like that party.
and when I see our fellow progressives down here in South Florida complaining about the fact that the Publix family donates to Ron DeSantis, it's like, it would be one thing if the Democrats weren't guilty of similar atrocities.
They take money from Walmart.
Like, come on, man.
So it's just, to me right now where I am, there is no party that I feel affiliated with. I am registered as a Democrat because that's the duopoly. It's where I live. But I don't feel like I'm really, you know what? I'm my own wolf pack. I not like anything having to do with Tim Black's wolf pack, but like, I'm thinking more out of The Hangover. Like, I'm a one-man wolf pack. Like, I don't like parties. I feel that's one of the reasons I love Jesse.
If you guys have not seen our interview with Jesse Ventura from Monday, please check it out. We're going to have clips up.
The ultimate
pretty
independent.
soon. We got a lot of them really coming up.
See, but then you don't want me doubling up clips, so then things come out that are new.
But
it's hard.
Well, I would say that what I would do is that I would do like I think we should, as soon as we get it together, I think we should do a Jesse clip like once a day. We should do like starting this weekend, and then, we're going to have like multiple ones to work with.
Yeah, well.
But it was a great interview. It was a great interviews tonight. This was really a great week. Next week, Garland Nixon is on Monday, and then we're going to have.
That's a really good Juneteenth guest.
Yeah, and then on June 22nd, we're going to have that lady about the water.
Oh, I'm very excited about this. Yeah, I was driving around in one of Florida's monsoons not that long ago, and I'm on the highway, and the roads, if I tell you, it's like, it looks like a sliding waterfall, just sliding down and pouring off the sides of the highway. Like, it almost looks like you could run a water mill from this. And I'm wondering, why don't we have municipal rainwater collection? Why is the county not setting it up so that, because you can, and so I'm like, is that a thing that's even done? Like, do people do that? So I started researching it. And yes, it is a thing that can be done. And it's something where you could end up having rainwater collection attribute for like 30% of your town's gray water usage, and for things like irrigating and all this. And it amazes me that nobody's ever really, we don't talk about this. And so I found someone, I looked this up, and sure enough, it is a smart thing to do. It's a cost-efficient thing to do. And just, it's not politically sexy thing to do. So we're going to have on somebody who knows about rainwater collection. And I know it's going to be one of those shows that's not sexy and not fun. But I got to tell you, people, I think we should be doing things like that.
We really appreciate you guys, as always, as you know. But our show could always use more support.
Definitely.
If you can go to patreon.com/generational change. One of the things that we do, again, because we do not pay ourselves, the money that would come in would go, for example, if you like the two candidates, Sam Cao and Sam Lawrence, that were on tonight, if you were to become patrons, there's a good chance that we will contribute to their campaign.
We do that, but we also do service money.
Service money. So we'll do beach cleanups, homeless care packages.
Yeah, I do homeless care packages. And we need to get back in with Z over at Mobile School Pantry. I looked up, they have no upcoming distribution. So I don't know.
Well, it is this, well, the school's year is over, but then they have events coming up. So,
but we were able to give money to the new community garden at Hallandale High School. So that's what the money is for, the money that comes in for our podcast. It's really just for us to do good things for people.
So if you guys like what we have to do, if you like our commentary, if you like the work we do locally, if you like the guests that we bring on, and you want to help our channel expand, because that's really what we need. We have a more successful growing social media right now, especially on TikTok, but it does cost money, and we want to be able to keep doing it. So if you like what we're doing, if you like our content and you want to keep it going, Please go to patreon.com
Yeah.
/generational change.
$5 a month, people.
Not a lot of money, guys.
It's $5 a month.
You know what I'm
It's
talking
very
about?
helpful. I mean, this is not exactly like some big enterprise that we have going on here, but I'd really like for us to be able to keep paying. We have somebody that's doing some stuff for us, like video clips, TikTok stuff, and I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, all of our new people that are here, TM Martin, LA comedians.
Yeah,
Mac,
guys, check us out because I
both
really want
parties
to
are
be able to
traitors,
keep these
which
people.
they are. Yeah. You guys are all new. Momo, if you like our content.
Both parties are traitors. That was when we were talking. That's one of my favorite books that Jesse Ventura wrote. It's called Democrips and Republicans. And it's true. They're horrible. And I am not a fan. So I agree. Like I am by no means, I think, criticize both parties fairly equally. The Democrats are particularly more annoying to me because technically that's my party. So it's sort of like you fix your own thing first and then move on. Like before I can criticize the other house, I got to get my house in order.
Yeah, you can't put out a fire in another person's house if yours is already on fire.
Right.
So that's what you're trying to learn.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Democrats. Plus, they are supposed to technically be the Labor Party. That's supposed to be their lane. And they're the ones who are no longer serving labor. The Republicans were sort of the corporate management party to begin with, at least in my lifetime. We don't need to get into the various incarnations of the parties, but I just think that that's why, for the same reason I find Obama the most disappointing. I have higher expectations for the people that are at least in theory supposed to be the working people party.
So with that said, we're not going to see it for a while.
I don't know if it can do electricity, but it can be used as drinking water. It can be,
which is huge.
to treat. It's
rather
huge.
than having to, buy water and put it in plastic. I mean,
yeah, it is huge, and you still have to use plants and stuff to purify.
This is the type of thing that we should.
This is why I'm having her on. I really want to know because, I'm sitting there looking at $5.95.
Yeah.
That thing could be running a water mill and probably, churning enough electricity for something. I don't even know what it's capable of.
We really need to get the, what's it called? The Sunrise Movement to pay attention to this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, and I've actually thought there's a couple of people that I think would be great that I'd love to talk to about this, like people that are in for whatever reason, like water type of stuff. Like water, it's a very important thing, water. And we're in a bad way with ours down here, and we're going to be running out of it. And I think we need to be thinking of some creative ideas. And this isn't even that creative, quite honestly. It's there's just water. It's just coming out of the sky. Why would you not harness it? We have some people that do residential. Florida actually does reward that, is my understanding. They're supportive of the idea of residential rainwater collection. What I'm talking about is municipal rainwater collection at a bigger scale.
It's a great idea, and it's a great thing for the environment. So hopefully we'll get some pointers, and maybe that's a project we can work on locally.
I think it would be great. And Florida is very amenable to it. I actually found that out. Yeah. So it is, which we should at least take advantage of that until they find that and crush it like they're doing with solar, or they're trying to do with solar.
Yeah, if they can't make a buck on it, then who the hell knows? But we appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed. Remember, go check out our interview with Jesse Ventura. Clips will be up soon. We'll see you from Monday. We'll see you Monday from Asheville.
Well, I'll be in Asheville. You'll be sitting right here.
And I'll be right here.